Hi, I'm Marcos, and welcome to Coming to the Faith podcast. On this episode, I sit down with Sariah Felix. She's what we like to call a PK, a pastor's kid, but she unpacks her journey and her coming to faith moment and what it's actually like now that she has this understanding, the perspective of who she is and who the Lord is to her. She's creative, she's a worshiper, she's a worship leader, and I pray that you enjoy this episode. All right, Sariah, thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking part in this interview. It's really special. It's multi-layered. Obviously, you're the daughter of Bernie Felix,
Yes.
who his interview was amazing,
Yeah.
and I shared this with you, so I'm going to share it again for the viewing public. He gave you a glowing recommendation. He says,
Aw.
"Hey." He's like,
He hypes me out too much.
well, he said, he's like, of the Felix children, you're probably gonna get the most raw and real,
Wow.
and it would be Sariah.
A
So,
lot of pressure.
yeah, so don't disappoint. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll try.
But no, I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, it means a lot, and you're a woman of many talents. You're a woman who's definitely pursuing the Lord at a level that I've not seen. And again, it's not that I'm the litmus, nor am I the standard, but I've been a part of the ministry for some time and I've seen where you were. And one of the things that drove me to want to have you on the podcast is this shift that I noticed. And again, it's not that, I'm not like a vulture, but I'm like, something's different here. And I kind of wanted to get a grasp on that because you're about 21, 21 years old. I've said this to a bunch of other young adults where it's like, listen, I remember being 21. I remember 24. I wasn't there. I was a mess. I dipped my toe a little bit in the, church, God pool,
Yeah.
but I wasn't committed and I had no footing. And I'm looking at someone like yourself who quite literally has done this super shift. And I was like, I want to know a little more about that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you share what you're willing to share, what you want to share. They're eavesdropping. We're having a conversation. But all that to say, Sariah, thank you so much. And you've definitely been an encouragement. I've seen the shift. Again, you don't need my seal of approval. But to that, I have to ask, and I asked everybody this. Who is Sariah Felix?
That's a very broad question. First of all, thank you for having me. I think that if I could describe myself, I guess it would just be, first of all, daughter of the king. That's first and foremost. I've kind of learned I always, ironically, because my dad was a pastor, and my parents were always in ministry, and my grandparents were pastors also. I kind of didn't like being associated with the church because you tell someone that your dad's a pastor and automatically they make assumptions oh, you must be this just perfect goody two shoes type of and I always resented that so much. So I didn't like associating myself with God or even telling people what my name meant, which literally meant princess of the Lord. Everything was just very religious, and the world didn't like that. And so it was always hard sharing with people that part of my life. And I was embarrassed about it for a while. And so I would say first and foremost, a follower of Jesus. And then secondly, a big part of my life is being a creative because that is literally my job. That is the passion and the career that I'm currently pursuing is photography and videography now also. And so I'm just actively pursuing that in the entrepreneurship aspect of it, of doing, running my own business and trying to, the industry that I'm in is it's a very fine line. And so you can either be in the world where you are you're in certain environments that are not the easiest to be around when you're also trying to grow your relationship with the Lord, because it's a lot of temptations and a lot of people who don't love the Lord and who don't, want to hear about God. And so I struggled with that for a little bit, but also trying to figure out how am I going to glorify you with this? Because you've given me this gift. How am I going to glorify you, God? You know what I mean? So I would say, yeah, like the biggest thing that I probably see is like my creativity is like a huge part of like my identity and who I am. And then I'm a daughter, a pastor's daughter. I serve here in ministry at IHOPG, doing a set once a week, and then also like in some Maranatha services, worship leading, and even just backup singing. So involved in the church as well. But yeah, that's pretty much how I think I would sum myself up.
But aren't you involved in another ministry? Like, isn't there this other musical ministry?
Oh, yes. Okay, so yeah. So I am also part of Haven. I'm
There we
currently on
go.
a break with that little about. I'm still part of the team, but I did go on a break. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot about that. Yeah, that was like something that I was doing for like a while, and I was really going like hard with them. Like really, we were doing like events like multiple times a month. It was like a really like vigorous thing. But as I was trying to like really focus on like the business side and like really lock down on that, I was like, okay, guys, like I need like a little break. So I kind of like, I'm still with the team, but I'm just not super active with them. I'm going to be more active with them again in, I think May is our next event.
Nice.
And then we have some stuff in the summertime. So pretty soon I'll be with them again.
Cool.
But yeah, it's been honestly a really long time since I've sang with them. I miss them so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
So then I gotta ask you. So you shared a little bit about who you are, and I do want to poke around a little bit there, but as the conversation evolves, I'll go back to it. But so you're 21 years old. You're obviously you're a part of an industry where, like you said, there's different expectations. There's things that are approved of or looked down on or what have you, and you're doing your best as you know how, in that you're seeking the Lord, but you're also trying to do right by establishing yourself, your footing in that career path in photography, videography. Something that I shared, that I've discussed with Bernie, that one thing he says is that his children all have been given this gift of creativity and a very entrepreneurial spirit.
It runs deep in our family.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just the navigating, like, okay, as he likes to put, like, okay, now how shall we live? It's very like, yeah, they all have that gifting. They're all entrepreneurs, but it's like, all right, but that gifting was placed in you. So how are you going to refocus it in where it brings glory to God?
Yeah.
So because of what you just said, what you just shared, it's intriguing to me because it's like, all right, so you're 21. Like there's an understanding. It's like, well, now you build so that you can relax in your 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
You worked hard, your 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
And you hustle and so forth and so on. But the other thing that I'm seeing you put your foot on the gas as far as like establishing yourself professionally, but I'm also seeing that effort in, like, you're at the very least, you're really trying to understand what is this all about. And something you said specifically, it was during one of the youth camps, where it's like, I love God, I know he's real, but I still have questions. And the one thing I can honestly say about it, it's not because you're sitting in front of me, but it's because I've watched it. I've watched this maturation process. I've watched the way your mind goes. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is you're not one that, you're not going to tell me what is. I need to see it for myself. I need to experience it, and I need to understand it.
That's from my dad's very analytical brain. I have like the same thing.
Yeah. So, and when you said that day, initially I was like, oh man. But then I have this habit where the day's events, I will replay, and I'll never forget when you said it that day, and I replayed it later that night, and I was like, you know what, that took more bravery on her part because of what you said. You're the daughter of a pastor. So it's like, you're kind of, I can't speak for you, but I've been around enough leaders' kids or pastors' kids or grandkids where they're constantly fine tooth combing, like, what they're gonna say or their actions or whatever. And when you gave that response that day, it was just very off the cuff, very open, very honest. And when I said, I was, good for her, because she's not simply submitting, oh, because of this, then this is the result of that. It's like, well, no, I know God's real. I know that, he has a son, but I want to know from me. You wanted to make it more personal, not because, oh, this is the family. This is what we did. And from that day forward, I said, okay. From that day forward, however, I can say there's been a shift in you. There's been, you'd say, I don't know what happened. I again, bless the Lord for that.
Yeah.
But it's encouraged me. So I got to ask you. So you told me who Sariah is. But what was that? Not quite the moment where because salvation's individual. Your mom and your dad, they did their absolute best in introducing you, raising you in the word. Like you said, your grandparents themselves were leaders, pastors. That's fine, but you're 21 and you, Sariah, had to make a conscious effort. You made a decision one day. It was like, no, I'm going to take this serious, or I want to know the Lord. I want to pursue him. So, but before we get to that, your coming to faith moment, what was your upbringing like? And you be as open, or you share as much as you'd like, but what was that journey like leading up to you finally saying, today I'm choosing to follow Jesus? What was that journey like for you?
Well, most of my life, I felt very like, I grew up in the church my entire life. Like from birth to now, I've like always been in the church, Christian church, obviously. And like as long as I can remember me being a baby, like my dad was a pastor. My family was super heavily involved in ministry. And that's kind of like all that I knew, really. And then even like outside of like, okay, it was like outside influences and stuff. Like I only went to like elementary school and then like the end of high school, but all between that, like I was like homeschooled. And so like I grew up how I felt very like sheltered in a way. Like I had friends that went to school, but I felt like there was certain things that I was just like very like protected from, And so I see that now as kind of like my foundation as to why once I went back to school and like was navigating these things that I didn't have to navigate before, all these things were like now my faith is not very popular because, I was just surrounded a lot by people where everybody obviously loved God. And now I'm surrounded by people who hate him. And so it was like very hard to like navigate that and like, also feelings and emotions and now certain freedoms that I didn't have before and a lot of temptations that came with that. And all of that kind of led me to falling away from the Lord for a little bit. And I would say like a good like year, 2, maybe 3 years. Like I would put 3 years is kind of pushing. I would say like maybe like 2 years where I was just not walking with the Lord. I only say 3 because there was a year even before those 2 years where I was already really, really struggling, but I completely like fell away from the Lord for like about 2 years, and where I was just like not living it. You know what I mean? Not following him, not following the word, not really doing any of that. And so, I think because of my upbringing, being in, learning everything that I learned for a large majority of my life, I was able to come back and bounce back in the sense of like, I had the knowledge. It was more just about a lot of those things growing up were, I don't want to say that they weren't genuine because they definitely were, but I guess the best way I can describe it is kind of just like, a lot of it was also just fear of disappointing my parents or fear of disappointing people. I don't want to make them look bad. Like how you said earlier, like with you've met certain like kids whose pastor, their parents are ministry pastor that they try to like filter what they say because they don't want to, that pressure is real. Like I felt that, especially at my previous church, it was very just like everyone was watching you. And I did grow up with that pressure and I did feel that pressure a lot. And so there was no room to make mistakes. There was no room to be human. There was no room to mess up or feel certain feelings because it ultimately looked bad on my parents, Even if my parents themselves never really put that pressure on me, like I felt it from other people and just the culture in general was very like, and so I wasn't always honest growing up. And I appreciate that you believe that I'm honest now because I've kind of learned to not be that way because of my parents. My parents are so honest, like, especially like, they both are, but like, especially my mom is just a very like honest person. And like, my dad is also extremely honest, but like my mom is just a very like, what you see is what you get. You know what I mean? And so I think just seeing that like also helps me to not worry so much about, what people are going to think or what they're going to say. But anyways, all that to say that, that was kind of like my upbringing, just that very like strict environment,
Very
very, very
sheltered,
sheltered, very strict. And so,
high pressure, not
yeah,
necessarily directly from your family,
right.
but from the
Just the culture in
community,
general, from the
culture. Yeah.
community, like it was very like very strict.
Yeah.
And so then coming to EG, it was very different, culture shock, honestly. And then just completely different, but in a good way, a very good way, in a refreshing way. But definitely an adjustment. And then, went through that season of my life where I was just not really walking with the Lord at all. And that season, I think, came from what I was saying before about like a lot of it was just like things that I would do to not make my family look bad, not necessarily because like I wanted to do them. And I always wanted, and then also like my analytical brain, like I wanted to like know certain things. And when I couldn't understand them, that would frustrate me. But I would say that between that time of like me being away from the Lord, I've said this so many times, like I've never felt like completely guilt-free when I was doing the things that I was doing. Because I like deep down like knew inside that it was wrong. I just really wanted to just be able to do what I wanted. I'm also very hard-headed, I'll be honest. I'm very hard-headed. And so like once like I believe something or I want something, like it's hard for me. Like the Lord has to really soften my heart. You know what I mean? Like he really had to like soften my heart because I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. And like, there's nothing you can really say. I gave my parents a lot of headache during that time. So it was just one of those things where like, I had to really humble myself, not me humble myself, like allow the Lord to humble me and like really soften my heart. And so I just got to a point where like where everything, the whole situation that I was going through just got really dark during that time. And so I was just like, kind of like, okay, there's nowhere else to go. Like, but to like turn to God, because I can't do this anymore. And so I was just like, okay. So I just started like trying to turn back to God, even though my heart wasn't feeling it. And I started to try to cut off certain things that were like pulling me away from him. Still not fully in love with him yet, but just trying to get myself together. You know what I mean? On my own strength. And just like, pray even though I didn't feel it. Just cut off certain people, cut off certain things, and just like really try to like just get my life together, And so I was just doing that for a while, and then I was still in church and, still coming. And then I had met a good friend of mine now, who was just like really in love with the Lord, and he was my age, and I hadn't really seen that. And so I hadn't really seen anyone like really, really, really in love with the Lord, like genuinely, and not just like in front of their parents or in front of like the church, but like actually like personally pursuing him. And it inspired me. And I kind of like asked him, like, why are you so like, what is it? Why are you so in love with God? Like, what is it? Because I had shared with him my struggle. And he was like, he basically was just like, he told me his testimony first, which is basically that he had been pursuing something. He was like fixing cars or something, but he loved it. He loved cars and he was in the industry. And then he literally left it because it was an idol to him and it was because it was pulling him away from God. So I was like, that's interesting. So I started to kind of apply that to myself. And I was just like, I started digging in myself and like, God, are like there any idols in me? And I started looking in idols and idolatry and just really seeing like what verses there were on that. And like, just really trying to like, see if this was maybe like the solution to like figuring out why I couldn't feel God, even though like I wanted to have that relationship with him, but my heart was like so like closed off to him and like just so hardened towards him. Basically I, was just really like it was a long process of like, it wasn't like, I would say there was a switch that was flipped, like going back to what you were saying earlier, once that moment happened. But it was like a gradual season of like figuring it out. And I feel like I'm still in that season right now, even. Like the Lord softened my heart completely to him once I realized what my idols were and why I was putting those things before him. Like the two things that I would say were the main ones was one, my career that I was completely putting before him. And then the second thing was like men, like whoever I was with like involved with during that time was like my everything. You know what I mean? And I put those two things before the Lord, like completely. And once I literally, like, I realized it, and then I had like a talk with the Lord. I was like, okay, like, I'm going to lay these before you. And I meant it for the first time, like with my whole heart. Like I meant it. I was like, I'm putting these things before you. I just want to be able to hear your voice. I just want to be softened to you again. Like I just want to get out of this feeling that I'm feeling because I feel numb. That's another thing I forgot to mention earlier was like during that whole season, I felt really, really numb to the Lord. And like, I just couldn't feel anything. That's why I was saying I was kind of going through the motions, just trying to fix myself, but not really feeling anything. And so I was just like, I just want to feel again because I feel so numb right now. And when I did that, that was the first time ever that like I just had this moment with the Lord where I was just so broken before him because I was just like wow, like I genuinely meant it for the first time. Like, I really want to just lay this before you. Like, he could tell me right now this was my passion. Like, this is my baby. Like, the thing that I loved was like the photography and like the creative world. And so to me, the idea of like giving that up was like one, embarrassing because I was like, there's people that like, this is what I'm known for. Like, this is what I've been pursuing and defending. Like, it's, first of all, it's not very like, popular to be in the creative industry as a career because you know you got your family who's like worried about you, and I'm defending it all these years like no, this is a real job, guys. Like, and then now to like backtrack, I was like, first of all, this would be so embarrassing if I just quit now or the Lord tells me not to do it. Like, how am I gonna explain that to them then? And then also like I genuinely love this, like I enjoy this makes me feel like alive, you know what I mean? Like it was just a huge passion of mine. I was like, if he gave it up to me, that's why I'm kind of giving some context as to why this was very important, like the fact that the Lord was really actually like helping me to surrender this to him. Like it was like my Isaac, you know, like the one thing that I had. And so to surrender it and lay it down to him. And then obviously a relationship, I was like, God, I don't want to be celibate for the rest of my life. I don't want to be like, I want to get married one day and have kids. Like, so like giving that up to the Lord and just like completely being like, God, like, I just don't want to give these things up. They mean a lot to me and I want them, and you know what I mean? And just giving that up and laying that down before him was just very hard. And so to do that was just like a real moment for me of like brokenness and just like of laying down my idols before him, you know, laying down the golden calf, laying down the Isaac, you know, and just really allowing the Lord to do whatever he wants and kind of just hands back, like, let's see what he does, you know? And so I didn't feel the Lord asking me to like completely lay down the creative path. I just felt him asking me to like redefine it and my use of it and what that would look like. And so that whole season was like a whole like rededication to the Lord. That's why I decided to do the internship, because I was like, I really want to be, I want to stay sensitive and I want to know more and I don't want to lose this, you know, because at the end of the day, like once we get past like the emotions of it, because it is emotional, it's overwhelming, then you're just left with like, you're just sober again. Like it fades away and the emotions are gone and you're just like kind of just you, and you're just like, you know, then you're back with around people that, you know, don't love the Lord, and then it's just like it just fades away. So I didn't want that to happen. So I was just really trying to submerge myself in like the word and everything, and just like really just like focus on anything that was, it may not have necessarily been bad, but it was just kind of like, if it's not bringing me closer to him, I don't want it, you know? And that's where I was at for like that whole season. So I was like really hypersensitive to the Lord and like really hyper, just like anti anything that wasn't like, I think I was only listening to Christian music for like, which was crazy for me at the time. Cause I would barely play worship music, barely play worship music. So me going from like barely putting on a worship song to even having anything in my playlist to only listening to worship music was like,
it's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you
that's
get
like the
ripped right
switch.
out
I think that you were like, so that was definitely part of like that switch. It was like one moment, it took that one moment, that one realization, that one prayer, that one like surrender before the Lord, and it was just like switched. And then after the internship was just like, you know, me. So now I have this faith, but now I was like, okay, I also want to understand it fully. And then that's when I was searching for like the logical reasoning to the faith that I had. You know what I mean? Because I believed it in my heart, but I'm like, okay, I have some questions and I'm doubting a little bit in my heart. So like, I want to, like, there has to be an answer for this. And I think that the heart posture is everything, because you can go to God the way that the way that not Elizabeth. I always forget her husband's name when she was
John?
bearing John.
Oh yeah, Zechariah.
Zechariah. You can go to God how Zechariah was and question God with like this like, God, like, why are you doing this? And then God like mutes you. Or you can go to God the way that Mary did and ask him like, I know you can do this, but how is this going to happen? You know? And that's kind of how I was going to the Lord, was like, I know that you are real, but can you explain this to me?
Because the response in that wow, words, in that specific interaction, you have Zechariah, who's literally met by a being who lets him know, I stand before the very presence of God. So this isn't happenstance.
Right.
I've been sent to speak to you directly. This is me who stands before the presence of God. I'm giving you this information, and it's not like, may it be your will, or finally, after all these years, my prayer, because he tells him your prayer has been heard. He doesn't say when the prayer was sent, but he said your prayer has been heard and it's being answered. But we're not given like an understanding of when that prayer was released. What we're told is him and his wife Elizabeth were advanced in age. We're told that he was his turn to serve as a priest in the house of the Lord. The difference between Zechariah and Mary, whereas Zechariah is like, how's this gonna be? My wife, we're advanced in age.
Or even like Sarah, when she was gonna, like, she's like, how is it gonna happen? I'm old already. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference. She laughed, So, and God's like, what are you laughing at? Like, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like, this is not too big for me.
Mary's response was rooted in, she's already, the angel recognizes her and says, you are favored amongst women. You are holy. You have been set apart. Like, you're righteous before. She had that confidence. But her posture asking the angel was more of like, how is this going to happen? I'm not married. I've not known a man.
Right.
So you have two different responses, whereas Zechariah, more seasoned, serving in the house of the Lord, is met by the very angel of the Lord who gives him the confidence, I stand before God. So trust when I'm telling you this is how it's going to happen.
Right.
And he still was just like, how? My wife's old. He's like, all right, so from now on, you're not going to talk into your sons into the world. That's it. So I hear that sentiment in what you're saying. The one thing I have to say, just backtracking a little bit, because I've been in that, someone very close to me, she refers to it as cage stage. Where it's like, once you come to the Lord, it's like there's nothing holding you back. You're gonna do everything possible.
You get like the zeal out of nowhere.
Like every preset on your car is 99.1 or the gate radio or whatever.
Literally.
So and then you feel like, Jesus loves you, and you're like entering like okay, I don't know if anybody does this anymore, but like back in the day, like I'd go to like a church retreat, come back on fire, and like go into like AOL, enter like an atheist chat room, and just be like, Jesus loves you all, or whatever, and then just everybody just rip me to shreds.
No shame, no embarrassment. So you're just like, that was like that season for sure.
And the other thing that, and I'll wave my hand guilty, I've done the strictly like, just Christian, cool, not a problem, but where I ran into a problem is, for instance, I could not be at the gym listening to worship music because nobody wants to see an overweight guy on a machine crying. Ain't nobody trying to see it at the gym.
Nice.
And then I used to work out super early, so I'm not gonna be at the gym 5 a.m. talking about
the phrases. I don't even know how to like. I feel like that makes me want to stop doing what I'm doing. And like,
so I get what you're saying though. It's a reality. It's one of those things where it's just. It overcomes us all. It's
a good season though. Like it's beautiful. It's a beautiful season, and I feel like when you're going from like being completely hardened to the Lord to like soften to Him, I feel like it's a necessary season because it's like it kind of prepares you for you're going back into the battle now because now you have to because like I said before, like once the emotions die down, now you have to deal with the flesh again, and it's a lot stronger like as time goes by. So I feel like that season is like it's very radical, but it's like necessary to like keep you going. You know what I mean? And I still feel like I'm kind of figuring that balance right now. You know what I mean? Like in that, because it's easy. And I'll be the first to say it's easy. Like once the feelings die down to go right back, it's easy.
Oh yeah.
And then you have to remind yourself of what happened, like how God kept having to remind Israel of what happened, and like kept having to, because it was generations and generations, and like it was stuff that didn't happen to them. He's like reminding them of stuff that happened to their great grandparents. You know what I mean? But it was like that. Like God had to keep reminding me, and it's still reminding me of what happened then and what I was feeling then. You know?
No, and like even as you're talking, I'm hearing you, and even the very industry that you yourself have recognized, where it's like, yeah, I'm trying to build this up, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what you're saying, it says that I'm trying to build this thing,
Yeah.
but I'm also not trying to make everyone else, like, I'm not trying to be influenced by this. I'm trying to be the influencer, not the influenced.
Yeah,
I'm
I
building this
definitely.
up with the Lord,
Yeah.
and you can have your opinion. That's, you're right, but with the gifting He's placed in me, this is how I'm gonna point it back to Him.
Yeah.
It's what I've been gifted. It's, I'm not compromising that. This belongs
Yeah.
to Him.
Yeah.
So it's, as others have said, that's not one assignment that I want, because that the entertainment world and
It's hard. It's
photography,
hard.
there's a lot to be said there, because it's like, it's almost as if everyone else is an enemy of God, and you're like, you're standing, you're
Yeah.
holding the line, but it's like that line's getting few and far
Yeah.
apart from the next person or what have you.
Yeah.
I will encourage you in that. Just continue to pursue the Lord in
Yeah.
what you're doing. Put Him first in
Yeah.
all your ways. But I mean, it's a breath of fresh air. It's super encouraging to, again, because it's so layered with you, because it's like, it's not only your industry or what you're trying to achieve, but you're also making your mark as an adult now.
Yeah.
A young adult. Like, yeah, you're still a mom and dad, but that, like, from your own admission, that's not what you want long term. You want the opportunity to be a mom and a wife and what have you. So it's not the forever thing, but you have that benefit where, like, you're with mom and dad at this juncture, but you understand fully that the calendars change. You're no longer Sariah. You're Sariah. I mean, before your parents, you'll always be Sariah.
Yeah.
But you're an adult now, and it's like, I'm opting to choose to follow Jesus
Yeah.
in spite of how I'm feeling on that given day, in spite of what temptations are going to surround me, because your industry, you guys are exposed to a lot. And, if there hasn't already been, I'm sure there's either times or coming times where you got to draw that line. Where,
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh
I'm
my
not,
gosh. There's been so many times.
I'm not willing to take pictures of that, or I'm not willing to record that, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have to say, so going back a little bit, so you have this radical transformation, but you also just turned 21. So what's that like? What leads you to the decision where you said you were at a bad place? You were, in darkness, as it were. You were disconnected.
Yeah.
What quite literally, leads you to the point where you say, Lord, I'm surrendering. I said, I'm not running, and I'm going to give this to you, and I may not have all the answers before me, but I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
What is that moment like?
My entire life, I think that, well, I don't think, like, this is how I've always, like, looked at it. Like, my entire life, I've always looked for purpose. Because, again, the intellectual side, I'm like, what's the point of all this? Like, that's a huge thing. Even when I was trying to decide, like, it's so funny. My dad could literally tell you this, but there was so many conversations that we had. I was just like, this is before I even, like, really decided to take photography as a career. I was like, Dad, like, but like, I don't impact people by being a photographer. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, does it make, like, does the Lord even, like, is He happy with that? Like, is He like, how does He feel about that? Because, like, ultimately what I wanted was just, I wanted to be filled with purpose, and, like, good purpose. Like, I was like, should I just be like a doctor? I don't like those things, but, like, I feel like that makes more sense. That's more useful. You know what I mean? Like, versus being just a photographer, And the type of photography that I loved at the time, and I still love to this day, was like portrait photography. I'm like, that doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, and like, not that it doesn't do anything, because people use it in companies and businesses, but like, it doesn't do anything necessarily. Like, it's not like a doctor saving a life or a firefighter saving somebody from a fire. At least that's how I looked at it. And so I was like, I love this thing, but like, I was like, is this significant at all? You know what I mean? And so I say all that to say, like, my mindset, even since I was young, has always been like, I need purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just do things aimlessly. You know, it makes me anxious. And so it makes me just feel like I'm just kind of like doing stuff, and like, I'm not a very like, just do stuff kind of thing. I need to know why we're doing this. Like, what is this for? What's the end goal here? Like, what are we, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of, that led me to, just really try to, that's how it was like before. I obviously became a photographer, and, I don't doubt at all that the Lord uses creativity and creatives to be able to minister or touch people's hearts in a way that a doctor couldn't, by providing these, like, the way I look at it is like, the arts in general is like a way to literally, for example, I'll give like the Passion. A lot of people I know personally, like, were saved by watching the visual representation. They would never saw it in that way of like what it looked like, Jesus coming down and dying for us. You know what I mean? And so in my head, I was like, okay, there's a place for this. There's a place for just the visual arts and just creativity to be able to use for the glory of God. And so, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
No, so
I literally was like,
so basically, so you have this encounter. You realize, you're like, all right, things can't continue as
Yeah.
they are. So you make what leads you to make where you make a
Right.
choice for the faith?
Right.
Your coming to faith moment.
Right. Oh, my coming to faith moment.
Yeah, like where you say,
Oh, okay.
you know what? I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus. I'm going to follow. I'm like, what was that? Given where you were, what kind of flipped the switch where like, all right.
To continue, like,
Yeah.
to continue to pursue him?
Yeah.
Got you. I think that it was just like really, I would say, I mean, it kind of ties back to what I was saying before. I think that again, going back to what I was saying, like the purpose part, like I always still needed like the purpose part. I couldn't do things aimlessly. And so I was like, okay, God, like, how am I going to honor you with this? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to. I know that our lives were meant to glorify God. And so I kind of knew already that doing anything outside of that or not glorifying him was just not an option. And like, I just didn't want to live a life that didn't glorify him. I didn't want to live outside of, I knew that was my purpose. Like, there was no avoiding that. And so I didn't want to like do anything outside of that. You know, I guess I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. I honestly feel like, I would say, I don't know. I think like following him was just like, it was just not an option to me. Like, I knew that we were meant to glorify God. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like, if you know that that's what your purpose is, then it's like, okay, then how do we do that then? If I'm here to glorify you, like, how do we do that then? It was just very simple to me. That part wasn't like a super complicated, elaborate story. I read the word. It said we were here to glorify God. And I was like, okay, so how do I do that? You know, it didn't really feel like, and it's been a gradual process too. That's the thing. Like, I'm still in that right now. So it's like, I can't, it's not even like a finished story yet. It's like, I'm still trying to figure that out. And like, I'm still having conversations with people and still trying to, even conversations with my dad, like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, how do I glorify God? How do I pursue him actively? You know what I mean? And living that out. And what does that look like? So I just feel like it's still like an active process of me trying to figure that out. Like, I started off and my main thing was doing like, portraits and things like that. But that's not going to be like that forever, because there are things that the Lord put on my heart during that season that I feel like he's calling me back to. And so, yeah, that part of like actively pursuing him, like with my life, is still like happening right now. You know what I mean? The choice was just easy because I read it and it said, we are here to glorify God. And so that's kind of like where I was just like, okay, that's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how do we do that now?
Okay.
If that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. I was more like, how do I say this? I don't want to, I guess it was more like, was there a singular moment or an action or an activity, something that like an alarm or a bell went off that was just like, I got to 180 this, meaning I can't walk like this. I have to do a drastic, like you had mentioned how you like cut some people off and you had shifted priorities or things that you just weren't willing to do anymore, or you weren't willing to compromise or what have you. So I was just more curious. Like I said, though, you just turned 21, and it's not to say you aren't. You know, your dad said this to me years ago, and I live by it today. You're not sinless, just gonna sin less.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, that's why I was just like, was there ever like a specific thing where like on this day, like I just hit my knees and I just like,
Mm.
Lord, like, you know what I mean? Like if there was that moment, everybody's story is different.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I was at this place and the light turned green and for me and whatever, just whatever
Yeah.
that. But if you're telling me like, no, it was quite literally this and was the gradual transformation from who Sariah was to this point, then hey, you know, like I said, I can't tell you your story.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that it was really that moment of like hearing. So I feel like there were two really pivotal moments. I would say one. Because there was that gradual shift of like, I really need to like stop walking in this path that I'm going down. And it was like a continuous for a while. So I didn't feel like I hit a moment. It was like a slow, gradual cutting off, a slow, gradual trying to reach out to God a little bit more, a slow, it wasn't like that one moment yet. The pivotal moment where like my heart finally felt like that switch was when I was on my knees, literally surrendering to him the things that meant the most to me.
Okay.
That was the switch. The whole like me trying to like the build up and then like the trying to get it back together and trying to like pray, that was very gradual. It wasn't like it was just like, this is really bad where I'm at, but it was bad like that for a while. And I stayed in that for a while. And it wasn't like one bad moment. It was just like I was in that bad place, like waking up with horrible anxiety, throwing up from like the anxiety and the depression and all that stuff that was going on during that time. And just like, but I was in that for a little while, you know what I mean? And then I was like, I need to get it together. Then I started slowly and gradually trying to pray more and trying to like, I don't feel it and when I'm praying, but God, like, if you're here and you're listening to me, can you please like, just give me peace? Can you soften my heart? Cause I don't feel anything. Like I feel so numb right now, you know? And it was like a very gradual, but then that pivotal moment was like the switch between I'm numb and I finally get it now. Like that was like my aha moment where like I finally understood now like why I hadn't been able to hear the Lord's voice. And I literally felt one of the things him telling me during that moment where like I finally realized it was like, I was asking him like, why don't I hear your voice? And my favorite thing, my favorite verse like that really spoke to me during that time was Jonah. I believe it's Jonah 2:8. I hope I quoted that correctly. But it basically said like those who take up idols for themselves turn away from the love of God. And so I was like, I realized like in that moment, like the reason why I can't feel his love is because I've taken up idols. And so, I really was just like, I felt the Lord telling me in that moment, like, you can't hear my voice because you're replacing me like with other things. You're putting other things before me. And then it's like, you're wondering why I was wondering why I couldn't hear him or I couldn't feel him. It's because I had no room to even feel him or feel his presence, or like I just filled it up with other things, you know? And so that moment where I realized that, and that moment where I finally like that aha moment, and then I literally like poured out everything before him and like just gave it to him, was like my pivotal moment where like I went from like cold-hearted towards the Lord to completely like sold out for him. You know what I mean? Because I just felt like that I just needed that, like, I wouldn't say humility, because it could have also been humility, but I feel like it was just like this, like, maybe, I guess the opposite. Yeah. It was a lot of pride too. Because I thought that I could like, I thought that I was good and I thought that I could do it on my own. You know what I mean? I thought that I would be able to deal with those things on my own, because that's literally what I was doing, was trying to like do it on my own, clean up my own mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like surrendering that to the Lord was like my pivotal like switch, and that pivotal moment for me where I finally like understood and got it. And that's when the Lord was able to like minister to me. And it was a lot of tears during that season of just like even regret, because, you know, being around people and claiming the Christianity and claiming to love God, and then like completely living a life opposite to it. I felt the guilt of that also afterwards. Like, I'm sorry, Lord, for like making them think that this is who you are, you know? So there was like, it was so many different phases during that whole process. But yeah.
Definitely want to encourage you one thing, because I haven't figured it out, and I'm older than you. I haven't figured it out. So don't ever be discouraged in that. Like, it's like, oh, like I still got to figure it out. We all do. That's why we walk out our salvation with fear and trembling. That's why, because we go from glory to glory and faith to faith. It's not like a one stop. Like, that's it. I've reached this echelon, and that's it. That's yo, and that's it. I don't have to. No, it's every day. It's every passing moment, every decision.
Absolutely.
Every time we wake up and we say, today, Father, I give you this day. Thank you for yet another day. Thank you for new mercies today. Every time we choose to pick up our cross and follow him, we re-enlist daily.
Yeah.
We're still developing. So just be encouraged and understanding that you're never going to fully figure this out. This is something that you're going to fall.
100%.
It's just like, okay, when you've fallen, what's the response?
Exactly.
Because no one's perfect.
Exactly.
But you seem to be in a really good place. You seem there was an interaction I had with you years ago, and you were definitely in high school, either junior, senior year. You had your Mac open. You were on the right side of the prayer room, and I was walking up, and I was getting ready to prayer lead, and I looked at you, and I said, "You want to help me prayer lead?" And you couldn't have had a more Bernie reaction because you quite literally sat up and you did, because he nods his head this
you
one
can
specific.
See everything right
so,
here.
So like you sat up, you were like, me? No. So, and I was just like
nah.
And in my mind I was like, it's okay, it's a matter of time, don't worry. Yeah. He'll get you one of these days. He'll get you.
No.
But no, but it's been really cool. Like, you've definitely come out of your shell. I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if it's a quite literally like the journey the Lord's taking. Well, no, I believe it's the journey the Lord's taking on, because I think he's purposely trying to get you out of comfort zones, get you out of certain things. Like, it's like, yeah, you're the daughter of Lorraine and Bernie, but you're also his daughter. And I think that there's just so much more. Again, I'm not prophesying or anything like that, but I just think that there's so much more that the Lord is going to do in your life. I think he's priming you and getting you ready for that. It's just that same tenderness that you're displaying. Just keep giving that to him. Like, keep keeping that heart posture before him of like, hey, this is what I like to do. This is what I want to do. But ultimately, what I want is for what you want for my life. And you keep that in front of you. You keep him in front of you. He'll honor you in the rest. Yeah. Be faithful in the little. He'll honor you in the rest. Yeah. So I got to ask you, though. Yeah. So this is relatively new to you, and you're continuing. And I pray the Lord continue to strengthen your walk and your efforts. But I have to ask you, though. So what keeps you going, though? So from this point moving forward, what's the one thing? Because guess what? Like I've said to the kids in the youth intensive, and I tell them all the time, hey, Monday's coming. It's all great and perfect when it's 5 or 6 days of like just drilling into you how much the Lord loves you and that this is real, and the emotion, like you said, it's at its highest level. But Mondays are around the corner. So what for Sariah? What does that look like? What keeps you going? What keeps stoking that flame, that passion? Not just the creative part of it, which I believe the Lord gave to you, but more of like continue to pursue him. Right. Not a building, not a religion, but pursuit of the Lord. Yeah.
I believe honestly that it's just like remembering, always going back to that moment and remembering that moment, that aha moment for me, because that was when I fully understood like what it means to really surrender to the Lord. And that was what, like, remembering that is what gave me the desire to want to serve him in the first place and want to have a relationship with him in the first place. And so I really honestly believe it's just the conviction. And then also growing that, like going to the internship and fully understanding, and like, we never fully understand, but meaning like having even more just background on like why we believe what we believe and the evidence for it. Like all those little things give me the conviction, and the conviction is what holds me down, because obviously there are emotions that settle down, and then once your emotions are settled down and you're just not in like a super sensitive place anymore, it's like, okay, well, are you walking now based off emotion, or are you walking based off conviction? And the conviction is literally that I know that the Lord is real because I've seen it in my life and I experienced him before. And because I know the Lord is real, it's just a choice of whether we choose to walk with him and to pursue him, whether we feel that he's there or not. And so I actively, now I honestly be honest, like it's a little easier now. Like I feel like I don't have to think about it as much as I used to. Cause now I just like, even when I don't feel it, it's a lot easier for me to be like, well, I still love the Lord even though I can't feel him. But that came with a lot of like time. Like I didn't always feel that way. When I wouldn't feel the Lord, it was hard to believe in him. Now it's a lot easier for me to love the Lord even when I don't necessarily feel him. You know what I mean? Even when I feel necessarily like I might be in like a, how can I say, like, yeah, I guess that is the best way to describe it. Just like we have these moments like where we experience the Lord in a very emotional, powerful way, you know, but then we also just have showing up on you know, I won't even say it on a Sunday, showing up in your car and playing some worship music and like just allowing your heart to be softened to him. You know what I mean? Like, but that's a choice. You know, you have to choose to do those things. So it's just like the conviction that I have that I'm just like, okay, even though I don't necessarily feel you in this moment, I'm praying because I know you are there and I know that this is just my heart right now. You know, Lord, would you soften me again? Lord, would you make me sensitive again? Lord, would you bring me back to that place again? Lord, would you increase the love that I have for you again? You know, and just continuously asking him to keep me in that place because it's hard to stay in that. You know what I mean? Because the world and the industry that I'm in and just, you know, our own feelings. It's not even always exterior. It's just our own feelings. You know what I mean? So just like that conviction is what I would say. Like that, I think that's what keeps me. But again, I didn't always have that conviction. Like it grew over time.
Yeah, no, and it's something that it's developed. It's not. It's your relationship with the Father. It's your relationship with His Son. It's understanding like, hey, I can't continue without you. I need you before me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it was your dad, Gary. It might have been both. It was definitely here, but something that was said, and that I agree with this. It's not goosebumps. The Holy Spirit is not goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's not an emotion.
Yeah.
Tears and tongues, those are all a part of it and they're great, but they're not the standard and they're not the be all end all.
Yeah.
That supersedes that.
Yeah.
Being a disciple of Jesus supersedes all the emotion of it. He is more than an emotion.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you, and that's good. And like I said, it's your perspective. It's what you do. It's not to say that it's one size fits all or what have you.
Absolutely.
So no, it's super encouraging, super uplifting. So I gotta ask you then the following. So, you being a young lady in an industry that, from your mouth, has opposed the Lord.
Yeah.
On different fronts, which to me, can we just buddy each other just a little bit? To me, is it's an interesting concept because the same industry they'll be like, oh, God's not real, or he's a really big bully or mean or what have you.
Yeah.
They have no issue elevating Satan, the devil, like, you know, the whole concept of the pitchfork and the horn. It's like God's not real, but the antipode is his direct rival 180 of who the good is. That's real.
And they won't attack anything but that. The moment you mention the name of Jesus is like a problem.
It's an offense.
Yeah, it's either offensive or it's just like, oh, don't bring that here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely been a struggle for sure.
And you in your line of work, is that something where you have to be like, that's fine. I hear what you're saying, but that's not my belief. Like that's okay.
There's definitely been a lot of awkward moments. Even like I said before, this is not so much now. Now I don't care. I will probably say it. But back then, like when I was, struggling with my relationship with the Lord, and just like when someone asked me, like I'm getting to know them, and they're like, oh, so like what are your parents doing? I'm like, oh, well, my dad, he was a scientist before, but now he's a pastor. And they're like, oh, and I'm just like, yeah, it's just so you're a pastor's daughter, and I was like, yeah, like it was always like a weird thing. And so then they knew, now my cover's blown. Now they know I'm a Christian. They know I love God, Yeah. But then they're just seeing me doing these things that are not that. So like, oh, really? You know what I mean? They're just like, you just see that surprise. And that was just like, before, that was always like the embarrassment that came with it. Now I will gladly talk about it. And I honestly, I like those awkward moments because I know that those are like the segues that the Lord provides to be able to, like, even if they don't convert right there with tears and like on their knees, like you sow a seed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love being in that place because of it. But yes, it is, there are a lot of awkward moments, and there are a lot of, like, like it's definitely been a lot of awkward conversations.
And like you said early on when we first started the interview, where it's like your parents never put the pressure up, but the cultural, the church,
Yeah.
like the magnifying glass is always
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So now, given your industry, given the
Yeah.
world that you're part of, now that you're like, hey, listen, you're not beating people to death with it. Like, Jesus loves you, repent,
Right.
sinner. You're not doing all that, but you are being light in darkness. You are being a witness.
Yeah.
So now, if anything, the target's just gotten that much bigger.
You know what I find funny though? It's like I wouldn't even try to like seek out those moments. The Lord would just literally allow them to happen. Like somebody would just bring up for some reason, like I don't know, like abortion, or they would just bring up like their relationship with God, or like just what their views on God are, and just like would naturally come up in these like little scenarios. And it allowed, I didn't have to like look for or be like just like aggressive about it. It just was just like something that would just come up, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I see what you're doing. And then I was able to speak on it. You know what I mean? So I find it funny because I'm just like, I would sit there and listen to them, and I'm like, I know what you're doing right now, God. Like,
Yeah.
I know what this is.
Yeah, I've seen this one before.
Yeah, I've
the
seen this.
ramp is
Here
right
we
there.
go.
Okay, here we go again. All right.
So
cool.
yeah, I don't feel like I've ever had to like, because when I'm on a job, I'm really focused on what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
those things would just like kind of naturally come up, and I'm like, okay, I'm here for a reason. You know what I mean? Like I know this is
Absolutely.
for a reason. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Good, really good perspective to have.
yeah.
All right. So I will say this, and as we conclude this, I ask every person I've been interviewed, they always say they have a different response. So I'm gonna ask you, is there, what's a statement, a word, phrase? It's your thought, your opinion, your perspective. What's something you would say to your former self, or anyone who may be struggling or going through the things that you've gone through? What's something you would say?
Stop trying to love God and put other things before Him. It's pretty simple, because that was the pivotal point in my relationship with Him, was realizing that the reason why I couldn't fully love Him was because I had put things before Him. And
Okay.
it's very simple, but that was like, I wish I would have gotten that sooner, because that would have allowed me to skip a lot of things,
Okay.
and be softened to Him, was if I had just put Him before everything else and not try to pursue a relationship with Him and while I'm literally putting things before Him. Like, it's a very simple answer, but I just didn't have that concept down yet.
So kind of like the idea of like not having your cake and eating it too, but saying I'm going to forego cake because I'm so
Kind of, because I think that it's not that you can't love other things. I love my family. There are things in this world that I love. I love my family.
Okay.
I love fashion. I love photography. I love things. But I'm talking more specifically on putting things before God. The reason why I couldn't fully pursue a relationship with Him or hear from Him was because I was really putting everything before Him. And after I switched that and stopped putting second things first, was when I was able to wholeheartedly love the Lord and start hearing from Him again and soften my heart and, just build that relationship with Him. So not necessarily you can't love other things, because we're called to love each other. You know what I mean? Like you can love other things, but it's more like putting those things before Him that I wish I would have understood sooner, because that was just like, that's such a simple concept. And it's so simple. Even just saying it is so simple. Just put Him first. And it's even a thing, like a slogan people say, like, put God first, but it is true. Like, that is the start, for at least for me, was the start of building a relationship with Him, was like genuinely being willing to give those things up and just lay it down before Him, was when I was actually able to like hear His voice and like really love Him and build that relationship.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having
It
me.
was really cool. Like I said, super conversational, super
Yeah,
smooth.
I was so nervous.
But no, yeah, but you did fine. You hit it out of the park. But I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I pray that that episode blessed you. If you enjoyed that, please tune in every month as we'll have a new voice and a new episode. Until next time, God bless.